All right, in this episode, we talk about throwing bullpens in the offseason.
And more throwing is not the answer.
All right, Brent Porcia, Stephen Godin at the @TopVelocity #Pitching Tips Show, where you go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and @TopVelocity #Pitching Tips. You ask your question, and we're going to answer it here on the show. Anything on pitching, anything we do here at Top Velocity. Also, go if you haven't already, subscribe, like the video, and share it and help us get the word out. Like I said, ask your question. And what is the question for today?
Marky asks, I try and throw 3 bullpens a week with about 40 pitches each time. Is that a good thing or too much on my arm?
All right, I like this question just because it brings up a good point. What are you trying to do in an off season? In an off season, are you trying to keep your arm fresh so when you get that call, hey, we want you to pitch tomorrow, you're ready to go? Probably not, right? What are you trying to do in off season? Are you trying to improve upon what you did bad mechanically, the mechanics that broke down from the previous season? Are you trying to recover from a sore arm? Or are you trying to gain speeds and get better for next season? Yes, if that's what you're trying to do, stop throwing now, okay? Stop throwing because your arm is being overworked, which is going to hold us back from what we need to do to the body. Same thing too, we want this to heal, right? So how long do we stop throwing? A couple of weeks is fine. You are gonna get back in a throwing routine, but it's gonna be drill-based. Because in a drill-based throwing routine, we're gonna keep the loads light. We're gonna focus on the lower half, all the things that take off the overcompensation from the arm and take it easier on the arm. And we're gonna be throwing in shorter distances, not longer distance. And then we're gonna attack and then build the things that are critical in the off season. Leg strength, leg power, total body strength, total body power, core strength, core power. I mean, we could hit every aspect of the body. Mobility, improved mobility, which typically is affected through overthrowing too. And then that's what, once we build that, what does it take to build total body strength, total body power, just putting it all together in mobility? It takes time away from any aerobic aspect or any high rep aspect or high energy aspect of training, which is typically in throwing a lot. So we're gonna have to stop that so we can just load the body with, over time, with weight, so it hypertrophies. Things that also improve, if you learn about the strength and conditioning of this, is rate coding, motor unit recruitment, all the things that we do to try to improve the central nervous system through building that strength. Things that you will not be able to do in overloading the system with reps of throwing on a mound or throwing in your pins. That will totally take away from what we're trying to do. So that's the first really big piece, is building that total body strength and then building that total body power on top of it. So we need to use macro and micro cycles, we use periodization and all these things to build this system up from all the abuse it took in the season, and more throwing is just going to prevent us from doing that. So if that's your focus, to throw harder next season, to be healthier and improve your mechanics, stop throwing bullpens, because it only reinforces what you've been doing to yourself in the season, and it's not gonna allow us to have a better next season. So that's why you would come into a 3X Velocity camp or come into a 3X Velocity program, learn this model, get into these drill-based throwing, so you still can work on mechanics and stuff, but it's not going to take away from what your body can handle when it needs to rest, recover, rebuild, and enhance, which is ultimately what we want to do and gain speed going into the season. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, I would just get into, there's a lot of things you could talk about this, but a big one for me too is just like Dr. James Andrews, Dr. Glenn Fleisig, like they're saying the number one thing that's happening with arm injuries, the number one thing is overuse. So it's a thing that, like, if you're in your off season and you're still throwing 3 bullpens a week, like, you're not giving your time arm to rest. I think that's, like Brent's touching on that's huge. Like, you need to give your time off, give your arm time off, and that's what they're Dr. Glenn Flyseg and Dr. James Andrews are saying, that it's people are playing baseball, especially pitchers, too long, like going year round, throwing, and it's just putting a lot of stress on the arm, and it leads to injury. So that's one thing that you just need to, if it's your off season, just take time off, stop throwing. Like, younger kids, they play other sports, like start doing some other stuff. But if you're older and your sport is baseball, you need to have your off season where you're starting, where you're training to get stronger, to develop some power and stuff. And if you're asking questions on this, like, I'm assuming you're trying to gain some velocity, and just going through a bullpen 3 times is not gonna build substantial velocity. Like Brent's saying, like, you're repeating the same mechanics that you have, you're not building any power, stuff like that. So anything that you're trying to do to build velocity just isn't there. So you really need to spend the time to start learning what you need to do to reach your velocity goals, and you really have to start going after them in that time period, because that's all you got. Once you're back in season, you're just going to be right back where you were with an arm that you've been throwing 3 bullpens for the entire offseason.
Yeah, and the reason pitchers have the weakest shoulders on the field, weaker than any other position, is because they throw more than anyone else in the field. And it doesn't give them time to build strength, and of course there's wear and tear in throwing. So you're just weakening your body the more you stay in that throwing regimen, specifically on the mound and a bullpen. You need to get away from that for an off season and rebuild that. And the reason, this is kind of hard, this short little video, to give you what needs to be done, but you cannot get your cake and eat it too. You can't throw every day and enhance power production and velocity at the same time. Well, you could, it'd be called steroids, but we don't do steroids. So you can't do it without an illegal substance overloading or enhancing your hormonal production. You're gonna have to get away from what's creating a lot of stress in your body and a lot of wear and tear, and you're gonna have to get away from a system that's requiring a lot of energy that promotes a certain type of muscle fiber and a certain balance of muscle fiber, and you're gonna have to get into an environment that's very strict to what we want, which is focusing more on hypertrophy, more on really getting more explosive energy out of the central nervous system. And not to redesign the program right now, but you need to start building the parts that have to be independent of the final part, which is throwing, and you can't complicate it and try to do it all together. And that's what baseball thinks. It can just keep trying to put it all together. We can throw, wait, get explosive, throw harder, get healthier. It doesn't happen. So you have to put it in its season. You have to separate it from each training system at the specific time of wherever season you're in, and then you have to give it the demands of what it needs in that season so that it can progress to the next season, and you get to where you want to be in the end season, which is throwing harder, healthier, fresher, and ready to go. And by you throwing in the off season, it's just going to complicate what needs to be done. And the reason I'm just kind of running over this, and it sounds all chaotic and everything, is because it's complicated, and I've worked really hard, years and years of designing it in the 3x pitch and velocity program. So when you get that program, you're going to take the time day in and day out to learn what I'm trying to put in a 5-minute video, which is impossible. And you can see how it needs to be broken apart and separated, and how each season is restricted to a certain aspect of training to get us prepared for the end season throwing. And right now you're complicating the whole system, and you're not going to get the end result. You're probably just going to push yourself into injury. All right, so that was a good question.
Can I say one more
All
thing
right,
too?
you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, so also, like, I really like to think of it as, especially like if you're doing this, like, I don't know if you're doing it just try to stay in shape, or if you're trying to do it to gain velocity. But if you're doing it to try to gain velocity, it's like, I like to think of it as like in terms of like a basketball player trying to dunk, like especially like a short guy, you know, the guy that's like 5'10" or something. Like, I don't know how tall you are, so this might not apply, just bear with me on this example. So like, say a basketball player, he's like 5'10" and he wants to learn how to dunk, right? So if he just goes out every single day and he just jumps for the rim every single day, and he can't get it and he's like missing by a lot, like, he's never gonna get there. He's never going to reach that goal if he just keeps coming and jumping and jumping and jumping and hoping he's going to do it. So in the same way, like if you just keep going out, like throwing, and one day it's going to be really hard, like that's not the way it's going to work.
That's called insanity, right?
Yeah.
You do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, so like you need to, I would encourage you to research developing athletic power, developing explosive power. How do you get more ground reaction forces? What it's all about. How do you become more explosive? Like that's really the way that you're going to need to go about it. Like you can't just keep going and throwing. You're going to need to learn how to get yourself there. If you're not where it's going to be, where you need to be athletically, you need to get yourself to that level, or it's never going to happen. And that comes with. Everybody's different, like we always talk about, but like you got to find what you need to do to get yourself to that level.
Yeah, so it's a good point.
Work.
So stop jumping to the rim every single day and stop throwing bullpens over and over and over again, because if your goal is to throw harder, to jump higher, to whatever it is, it's more than likely not going to be found in repping the skill over and over and over again, unless if you're just trying to get better at precision and get better at motor control, well, not even motor control. I'd say if you're just trying to get better at consistency, that's all it's going to do. A rep is just going to get you better at being consistent at that rep, because all the other components are separate from the rep, right? It's reps and other things and other ways and other demands. And that's what we're trying to teach you here. And you need to go to topvelocity.net and check out the 3X programs if you really want to learn the intricacies, which we could never put in a 5-minute video. So understand that. As much as this sounds chaotic, we could never put it in a short video. So go check out the programs, go check out everything else we got. And if you have a question, go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and at Top Velocity, #pitching tips. Ask your question, and we're going to answer it on the show.
Boys.